This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhu. It's Monday, June 10th. This is Africa 54. A mass civil disobedience campaign in Sudan leaves the streets of Khartoum deserted as violence rises. Ethiopia seeks a new image after years of media repression. And colorful collections dazzle at the Dakar Fashion Week. We begin tonight in Sudan, where pro-democracy campaign of civil disobedience to demand civilian rule left the streets of Khartoum largely deserted. Francis Maguire has the details.
At any other time, these would be busy streets, but the crisis in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, have left it mostly deserted. The country's pro-democracy movement has called for mass civil disobedience as long as the ruling military council remains in charge. This baker, who wished to remain anonymous, said he hadn't closed down the bakery so people could eat, but that civil disobedience could continue. Last week, dozens were killed when security forces stormed a protest camp. And according to witnesses, more violence again over the weekend, with police reportedly firing tear gas in the city's northern reaches. This resident, who also wanted to remain anonymous, said people don't want the current military government and that he personally wanted a civilian one. The military council and an opposition alliance took over from the former President Omar al-Bashir, who was forced from his post in April over mass protests against the government. The military said it would maintain calm and steer a transition that would lead to an election. But over the last few days, the protest movement has tried to keep up its momentum in the wake of violence. And in the meantime, public transport is barely functioning, most banks are closed, and few flights are taking off from Khartoum airport.
Francis Maguire of Reuters with that report. 8,000 Ethiopian Jews want to move to Israel and join their families already living there. But they accuse the Israeli government of delaying their immigration for racist reasons, accusations the government denies. Linda Grantstein reports from Jerusalem.
An emotional scene at Israel's Ben Gurion airport as Germa Desi embraces his mother for the first time in 7 years. His mother arrived after finally receiving permission to immigrate to Israel from Ethiopia.
I immigrated 7 years ago and I was alone, but now, finally, thank God, I am not alone anymore. Here my mother is coming and it's very emotional for me.
Desi says all of the Jews still in Ethiopia should be allowed to come to Israel.
It's not just me. There are a lot of families where some moved to Israel and some stayed behind. We don't know why. In many cases, one brother comes to Israel and the other has to wait 15 or 20 years. We ask why, and the government says, wait.
Many Ethiopian Jewish families are still split. Some here and some still waiting to come. Yaya Werko came to Israel by himself 15 years ago, followed 2 years later by his mother. They prepare Ethiopian food in the immigrant housing center near Jerusalem where they've lived since their arrival.
9 months after I moved to Israel, my daughter died. I feel like I abandoned her because they didn't let us come together. One of my daughters has been waiting 22 years to come to Israel. Why are they doing this? Maybe it's racism. I really don't know.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's government dismisses these accusations, saying Ethiopians are treated as equal citizens. The government claims there is simply not enough money in the budget to provide the services the new immigrants need. This claim is rejected by the Ethiopian-Israeli community of 140,000, which is getting increasingly angry at the government's policy, says pro-Ethiopian activist Elisa Bodner.
The government in 2015 made a unanimous decision to bring the remaining Jews of Ethiopia to Israel, and until now has not fully implemented this decision. And today, the family members have decided that it is enough, that their lives are worth just as much as any other lives here in Israel.
Besides family reunification, Ethiopians have staged demonstrations against police brutality, which they believe they suffer from disproportionately. Overall, they complain they are treated as second-class citizens in Israel, says Shlomit Bukaya of the Association of Ethiopian Jews.
אני חושבת שרוב הקהילה האתיופית מרגישה היום שהיא לא שוות זכויות כמו
I think most of the Ethiopian community feels we don't get equal rights, even though we have equal responsibilities. We pay taxes, we serve in the army, but when it comes to rights, we face a lot of problems.
Despite the problems, Ethiopian Jews are still clamoring to come to Israel and be reunited with their loved ones. Linda Gradstein for VOA News, Jerusalem.
Ethiopia was once ranked as one of the worst places in Africa to work as a journalist. It's now trying to become a model for press freedom in the region. Here's Serena Chondre.
The Oromia Media Network used to broadcast from the United States because it was banned in Ethiopia, a country ranked as one of the worst places in Africa to work as a journalist. But Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is trying to shake off that image with bold reform pledges like the release of thousands of prisoners, including journalists and dissidents. The TV station opened its studio in Addis Ababa last year, and while its managing director Tolera Fikru welcomes the changes, he says there's still more to be done.
Most of the people who work in lower ranks of government have limited understanding of the media. We encounter a lot of public outcry, and when we try and take up these issues with them, they either tend to avoid us or fail to respond properly. This is one of the emerging challenges we're facing.
Ethiopia jumped 40 places in last year's Press Freedom Index by Reporters Without Borders, which noted that over 250 previously banned websites and blogs are now running. And for the first time in 15 years, no journalists are being held in connection with their work. For many residents in the capital, being able to read a newspaper is now a welcome activity.
It is good to have two sides of a story. We should encourage that. But there are those who publish unrealistic stories and photographs. Since the transition, we now have a platform to entertain all sides of ideas, whether good or bad.
Ethiopia ranks 150 out of 180 in the 2018 World Press Freedom Index. A commission has been set up to review its media laws and improve working conditions for journalists.
Serena Chondre of Reuters with that report. Violence erupted early Monday in central Mali, and at least 95 people were killed when armed men attacked a village overnight, shooting people and setting homes on fire. A reporter in the region told VOA the attack targeted the village of Sobanetu near the central city of Mopti. According to initial media reports, the village inhabited by ethnic Dogoni people was likely attacked by ethnic Fulani fighters. Now to Uganda, where weeks of torrential rain is wreaking havoc to locals and business owners in the areas around Kampala, with heavy flooding reported over the weekend. In recent weeks, flash flooding has killed at least 8 people. Heavy rains have triggered widespread damage and cut off several major roads. The Kame Valley, located about 25 kilometers east of Kampala, incurred significant damage after a heavy downpour on Saturday. The devastating rains over the past few weeks has left 500 people displaced in suburban and rural areas on the outskirts of Kampala. Businesses have been lost and several small farms have also been destroyed. The Ugandan Red Cross Society has launched awareness campaigns to ensure that more people are aware of the effects of flooding, such as diseases that come as a result of stagnant water. Cyclone Idai ripped through eastern Zimbabwe 3 months ago after striking Mozambique and Malawi. On Monday, a top UN official for humanitarian affairs and emergency relief said Zimbabweans in the storm-ravaged areas are devastated, distressed, and still struggling to get much-needed food and medicine. Ursula Mala says people are still food insecure and cannot access basic health care. Mueller, who is visiting Harare, says the UN and its partners have received just 40% of the $294 million they appealed for to respond to the effects of Cyclone Idai. She says it is important that there are plans to resettle people into areas that are not disaster-prone. Now, the rivers of the world are full of antibiotics. That's the headline of a new survey that sampled rivers worldwide. VOA's Kevin Enox has more.
John Wilkinson from the University of York and his team of researchers traveled the globe, testing water in 72 countries, looking for traces of 14 common antibiotics. He found the bacteria-killing medicine in 65% of the rivers he tested.
In a few cases, we found that the sort of what we would call the safe level of concentration of an antibiotic in a river was exceeded by more than 300 times. This particular case was in Bangladesh. And what we're able to identify as some of the causes for this is actually policy related in the way that we dispose of waste.
But where is it all coming from? Wilkinson says it's not clear yet.
It's hard to place a blanket statement over all of these data, other than we have been able to pick up some spots where these are quite high concentrations of some of these chemicals.
But armed with this new information of where the antibiotics are located, researchers should now be able to figure out how it's getting into the water and how to stop it.
So really, with the first time now, we're able to say, okay, in this spot, in this river, this is where we might want to go back and investigate in a bit more detail. And we may be able to, by identifying certain drivers of that contamination, be able to pinpoint what we can do about it, which is the next big step.
And doing something about it is a huge priority, because all these antibiotics may be responsible for the rise of drug-resistant bacteria.
So this is really where you're seeing these massive concentrations of some of these chemicals. And in a world today that we live in that's so interconnected, you can bring these bacteria and these potential infections on a plane from Nairobi to London in just a few hours, just being so interconnected the way we are today.
Wilkinson says the places where he found the biggest problems were in Africa and Asia, but that Europe, North and South America also had some antibiotic hotspots, making this, according to Wilkinson, a global problem. Kevin Enox, VOA News.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. Moving on to one of the other stories coming out of America. Each spring, colleges and universities ask speakers to deliver words of wisdom to its graduates. Who knows better than those who left home as teenagers to study in America? VOA talked with two international students whose hard work earned them 4-year full-ride scholarships to Babson College and Harvard College. Kathleen Strack reports, and Bronin Benito narrates this report.
College graduates Deborah Quiero-Sena and Miriam Topeshashvili did not have a life of privilege growing up in Brazil. So coming to the U.S. to study was a major adjustment.
The idea of coming here was totally different from what moving here actually represented. I started finding out things about myself, so values that I had back home that I felt like they no longer applied to my life here.
I think the biggest challenge for me was the culture, specifically at Harvard. My freshman year was very tough because everyone is the best from their schools, from their cities, from their states and whatnot.
Miriam's family fled Georgia as political refugees when she was 4. They ended up living in a Rio de Janeiro slum called a favela. Deborah, from Salvador da Bahia, dreamed of coming to study in the U.S. too, but her family could not afford the expense. Both participated in the State Department's Education USA program that acquaints young internationals with American colleges and universities. Deborah ended up at Babson College in Massachusetts, a business school.
Opportunity changes everything. I think that everyone is born with a certain ability to think and rationalize, but because people are given different opportunities, they do perform differently. After 2 years at Babson, that was when I felt like, okay, I think that we're on the same level now.
We'll be right back.
am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
The lyrics could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Known in Egypt as kobkab, these clogs are kept in many mosques for worshippers to use and are seen as practical footwear for washing up. The clogs are made from wood and leather and are usually worn as slippers. The footwear's roots go back multiple centuries, and the clogs were still commonly used well into the 20th century. They were widely used in houses or public baths across the region. But over the past decades, demand for the traditional footwear has seen a decline as plastic alternatives flooded the markets. From Egypt to the West Bank and Syria, the number of clog makers has dwindled. Despite the fall in demand, Egyptian clog maker Nur Abid El Razik says people are turning once again to the wooden clogs. He explains that while slippers can get stolen when worshippers take them off at mosques, the wooden clog is less likely to be lifted. Next up, this machine is churning out leather, but instead of animal skin, it's made from pineapple skin. Fashion students at London's Royal College of Art are showcasing their sustainable collection, featuring handbags made of ice cube trays. One of the ways these young designers want to cut waste is by reducing the number of materials they use. One has a vision for people growing their own garments with slime mold. Yes, slime. The living organism is applied on his pre-designed patterns and can grow up to 1 centimeter per hour. Larger big-name fashion houses have been pushing their environmental cred in recent years. So while you might not be rushing to grow your own slime jacket just yet, some of these ideas could be part of the future of sustainable fashion. And finally, Microsoft on Sunday gave the world a first glimpse of a powerful next-generation Xbox gaming console. Xbox chief Phil Spencer pulled back the curtain on Project Scarlet, the successor to the Xbox One. No pricing plans for the new console were revealed at a gala event ahead of the opening of the Electronic Entertainment Expo video game industry gathering. The new Xbox was promised to be released in time for the Christmas holiday shopping season in 2020. Xbox said that it's adding the ability for players to stream games in their libraries for play on mobile devices with Game Pass subscriptions. And that's what's trending today.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador are touting an accord to reduce the flow of Central American migrants to the U.S.-Mexico border. The deal led Trump to suspend threatened tariffs on Mexican exports to the United States. VOA's Michael Bowman reports from Washington.
An exultant President Trump taking victory laps on Twitter. Quote, everyone very excited about the new deal with Mexico. There is now going to be great cooperation between Mexico and the USA, something that didn't exist for decades. In Tijuana, Mexican President López Obrador hailed a trade war averted.
Celebramos el importante acuerdo de ayer porque
We celebrate the important agreement because it was a very difficult situation and would have been very awkward applying tariffs to some U.S. products. The same measures, commercial restrictions, similar to the ones that would be imposed on Mexican exports.
The accord calls for Mexico to better patrol its southern border with Guatemala and to hold asylum-seeking migrants while their cases are heard in the United States. In a statement, Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said it was good news that U.S. families won't be hit with the price increases that would have resulted from new tariffs on imports from Mexico. McConnell also urged more funds for operations along the U.S.-Mexico border, accusing Democrats of dragging their heels and engaging in political gamesmanship. Democrats, meanwhile, say Trump's own actions have worsened the migrant crisis and that the deal with Mexico was no masterstroke of White House diplomacy.
The president has completely overblown what he purports to have achieved. These are agreements that Mexico had already made, in some cases, months ago. By and large, the president achieved nothing except to jeopardize the most important trading relationship that the United States of America has. There are 6 million jobs in this country that depend on U.S.-Mexico trade.
For Central American migrants, a perilous journey to the United States is expected to become even more difficult.
Everyone should think about the reasons that cause us to migrate and leave our families, our country, and come to another country. Instead of closing doors, they should give us an opportunity to demonstrate that we are people who want a job. The only thing we want is a better future for our children and our families.
Some say they will not be deterred.
You can close the border. You can build 1,000 walls, and 1,000 walls will be crossed by land, by air. They're always going to get in. Donald Trump can do whatever he wants.
Migrant arrivals at the U.S.-Mexico border are surpassing 100,000 a month, including record numbers of families and unaccompanied minors. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
The 17th edition of Dakar Fashion Week presented designs from 28 participants, including Congolese designer Lupita Swaga and her Afro-futuristic collection. We get all the details from Francesca Lena.
A dazzling array of glamorous couture from the catwalks of Senegal. The 17th edition of Dakar Fashion Week came to a grand close on Sunday. It's an annual event which gives African designers a platform through which to connect with the world.
Every year we want to get better. We want to go higher, be stronger. We want each year to show the Senegalese public and the world, because we're lucky to be shown by networks that put us on the air. The beautiful African designs and the beautiful African creativity. Africa is in fashion, a little bit thanks to us, and we're taking advantage of this interest around Africa.
28 designers presented their creations at this year's fashion extravaganza, including Congo's Lupita Swaga, who showcased her signature style, Afro-futuristic.
I'm happy because the more I move forward, it's almost like a victory to me. Because at the start, when people saw me in 2012 to 13, they thought I was an extraterrestrial. So now it still shocks people, but it's better because they're almost pleasantly surprised.
Among those in the audience, Spanish actress Rosie de Palma. She's been given 8 pages in the next issue of Vogue Spain, exclusively dedicated to Dakar Fashion Week.
Francesca Lena of Reuters with that report. In our Monday Sports Report, the International Basketball Federation, known as FIBA, is expecting the Professional African League, due to launch in 2020, to be a showcase for New Hope's talent. With the support of an African-born former NBA star like Dikembo, Mutombo, talented young players are already getting support to move up to the next level. Elizabeth Casimiro reports from Luanda.
Former NBA star and Hall of Famer Dikembo Mutombo has helped set up an NBA-supported clinic to train and observe new talent in Luanda, the capital of Angola, where he made a visit last week.
It's all about tomorrow.
Dikembo is following his roots as he was born and grew up in Kinshasa, a 45-minute flight from here before he became an NBA All-Star.
I think my presence means a lot to show to the young people who are playing the game here that we still care about them, we're following them, we want them to succeed. And we want the game of basketball to continue to grow in the continent.
The clinic has been organized by Will Voigt, an American basketball coach who is currently the head coach of the Angola national basketball team. After training Nigeria, he is now helping Angola to build the next generation of players.
So we're trying as best we can to give them a fair opportunity to learn, to grow, and we've already seen, what players from the continent can do when given that.
Olumide Oyedeji, one of the former NBA players who came with Dikembo, believes that African basketball is growing and that it has overcome the times when the game was dominated by a few countries like Angola and Egypt. He hopes one day an African national team may reach the FIBA World Top 10.
I believe we have a chance. We have to just continue, keep playing, keep getting better. They said the journey of 1,000 might start with a step. I believe we're taking the right step.
As the search for new talent takes place, Angola hosted the final of the FIBA Africa Basketball League 2019. Local home team Primeiro de Agosto won the competition, beating Association Sportive de Salé 83-71 to get a record 9th African title.
The concept of this is Africa. It's not a national. It's Africa at all. This is why we give opportunity for the teams to have, a part of foreign players, to have two African teams, two African players.
The new league, to be known as the Basketball Africa League, or BAL, is scheduled to play in January, with 12 teams from across Africa. The teams will be chosen through regional competitions, and the top teams will advance to the BAL. For VOA News, Elizabeth Casimiro from Luanda.
And that wraps up our sports segment for today. That's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.